Commander Vix-Tal adjusted his bioluminescent sensors for the third time in 10 minutes, staring at the holographic display with what could only be described as profound confusion. The red warning lights in the Galactic Defense Council's Strategic Command Center bathed everything in an ominous glow, but honestly, nothing about this situation was making sense anymore. Sir, his aide, Lieutenant Corps 9, approached with a data pad clutched in his primary appendages. The strike report from the Keth Moore assault fleet has arrived. Vix-Tal's chitinous exterior clicked with anticipation. Finally, some good news. The humans had been a persistent thorn in the coalition's side for months now. They care training facilities churning out soldiers who seemed to treat warfare like some sort of recreational activity. The plan had been simple: bomb their primary training base, eliminate their next generation of warriors, and watch their morale crumble like stale protein bars. Excellent. I assume total destruction was achieved. Vix-Tal rubbed his secondary hands together, producing a sound reminiscent of sandpaper on metal. Corps 9's optical stalks drooped slightly. Well, sir, that's where things get a bit complicated. The commander's bioluminescence dimmed to a suspicious yellow. Define complicated, Lieutenant. The base was successfully bombarded with our most advanced plasma charges, sir. Direct hits on all major structures. However, Corps 9 paused, consulting his datapad with obvious reluctance. The humans appear to have passed their final examinations with flying colors. Vix-Tal's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sure sign of mounting frustration. Excuse me? They passed what now? Their graduation ceremony, sir. Apparently, they interpreted our bombardment as part of their final training exercise, something they called advanced pressure drills under extreme conditions. The commander stared at his aide with the kind of expression typically reserved for discovering that one's favorite food had been replaced with synthetic substitutes. You mean to tell me that we dropped enough firepower to level a small moon on their heads, and they thought it was homework? That's correct, sir. In fact, according to our intelligence reports, they gave their instructors excellent reviews for creativity and realism. Vix-Tal began pacing around the command center, his 6 legs creating a rhythmic tapping that echoed off the metallic walls. Other officers stopped their work to watch their commander's increasingly agitated movements. His bioluminescence was now cycling through colors that didn't exist in most species' visible spectrum. Show me the footage, he demanded, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made junior officers check their life insurance policies. The main holographic display flickered to life, showing aerial views of the human training facility. What Vix-Tal saw made his auxiliary heart skip several beats. Where there should have been smoking craters and scattered debris, he instead witnessed humans emerging from what remained of their structures with expressions of, "Was that satisfaction?" Lieutenant Drake, report. The voice belonged to a human instructor, a woman with graying hair who looked like she'd been carved from the same material as their defensive bunkers. Ma'am, that final simulation was incredible. The plasma charges felt completely authentic, and the structural collapse scenarios were perfectly timed. I've never experienced such realistic combat conditions. The instructor nodded approvingly while checking something on a tablet that had somehow survived the bombardment. Excellent work, class. You've all demonstrated exceptional adaptability under pressure. Congratulations. You're now certified for extreme environment operations. A cheer went up from the group of humans, many of whom were covered in dust and minor cuts from the actual bombing that they'd just survived. They were high-fiving each other and taking what appeared to be commemorative photos with the still smoking ruins in the background. Sir, Corps 9 whispered, are we absolutely certain these are the same humans we've been fighting? Vix-Tal's optical sensors zoomed in on one particular human, a young male who was examining a piece of twisted metal that had clearly been part of their weapons cache. The human held it up to the light, nodded thoughtfully, and then tucked it into his pack like a souvenir. Private Martinez, the instructor called out, what's your assessment of the final drill? The young human grinned widely, displaying an unsettling number of teeth. Honestly, Sergeant Williams, I was worried the training might be too easy. But whoever designed this simulation really understood how to push us to our limits. The way they coordinated the explosions with the structural failures was pure genius. I felt like I was in a real combat zone. Sergeant Williams made a note on her tablet. And how would you rate your preparedness for actual battlefield conditions? I feel completely ready, Ma. I am. If we can handle pressure like this in training, I'm confident we can handle anything the enemy throws at us. The camera panned to show other humans collecting their belongings from the rubble, chatting excitedly about their graduation exercise. One group was already discussing how they might improve their performance if they ever encountered similar conditions again. Vix-Tal slowly turned away from the display, his bioluminescence having settled into a deep purple that his species associated with existential dread. Lieutenant, please tell me you have some explanation for what I just witnessed. Core 9 consulted his datapad again, scrolling through what appeared to be extensive documentation. Well, sir, according to our xenological profiles, humans have a documented tendency to find challenge and meaning in situations that other species would consider traumatic. They also have an unusual capacity for adaptation and a cultural tendency to treat adversity as a learning opportunity. But we dropped thermonuclear equivalent ordnance on them. Yes, sir. And according to this report, they've requested that we provide similar training simulations for their other facilities. They're offering to pay us for our services. The commander's mandibles began clicking so rapidly that they sounded like an old-fashioned typewriter operated by someone having a seizure. They want to hire us to bomb them? Apparently, sir. They've submitted a formal proposal through diplomatic channels. They're particularly interested in what they call full-spectrum adversity training. They want us to attack their supply lines, jam their communications, and conduct psychological warfare operations against them. Vix-Tal collapsed into his command chair, which groaned under the weight of his exoskeleton and his mounting despair. And they think this will help them become better soldiers? According to their proposal, yes. They believe that training under actual combat conditions with a genuinely hostile force will give them an unprecedented edge in real conflicts. The commander stared up at the ceiling, where the ventilation systems hummed with mechanical indifference to his growing sense that the universe had developed a sadistic sense of humor. What did our psychological warfare specialists make of all this? Core 9 flipped through several pages of his report. Well, sir, Agent Click 17 attempted to demoralize the humans by broadcasting messages about the futility of their resistance and the inevitability of their defeat. And the humans recorded his broadcasts and are now using them as motivational materials. They've set them to music and play them during their physical training sessions. Agent Click 17 has since submitted a request for psychological counseling. Vix-Tal's bioluminescence was now flickering between colors so rapidly that it looked like a biological strobe light. Is there anything at all, that actually discourages these creatures? Well, sir, they do seem to get upset when their food rations run out, but even then, they just start eating things we didn't know were edible. Apparently, they have a saying about it: when life gives you rubble, make rubble soup. The commander stood up abruptly, his chair spinning away from him with obvious relief. I need to speak with High Command immediately. This situation is beyond my current operational parameters. Sir, there's one more item in the report. Vix-Tal paused at the communications console, his hand hovering over the emergency contact button. What now? Now. The humans have submitted a performance evaluation for our bombing run. They gave us 4.5 stars out of 5. 4.5? What cost us the half star? Core 9 consulted his datapad one final time. They said our timing was excellent and our targeting was precise, but they felt our psychological warfare component lacked creativity. They've included some suggestions for improvement. The commander activated the emergency communication channel with the kind of deliberate calm that preceded either enlightenment or complete mental breakdown. High Command. This is Commander Vix-Tal. I need to speak with someone about the human problem. Preferably someone with experience in applied xenopsychology and a very strong stomach for the absurd. While he waited for the connection, Vix-Tal found himself staring at the tactical display showing the human training facility. The humans were still there, cleaning up the debris and apparently taking measurements of the crater patterns. A few of them had set up what looked like a small celebration, complete with beverages and what might have been cake. "Commander," came the voice from High Command. "What's your status report?" Vix-Tal took a deep breath, which in his species sounded remarkably like air being let out of a tire. "Sir, I need to report that our mission was a complete success that somehow managed to be a total failure. The humans are not only undefeated, they're actively grateful for our assistance in their training program." There was a long pause from the other end of the communication. "Repeat that, Commander." "The humans, sir. We bombed them. They thanked us. They want us to do it again, but with more creativity next time." Another pause. Longer this time. "Commander, are you perhaps experiencing some form of stress-induced hallucination?" "I wish I were, sir. I truly wish I were." The display showed one of the humans, a tall woman with short cropped hair, approaching what remained of their communications equipment. She began working on it with tools that looked suspiciously improvised, and within minutes she had somehow restored basic functionality. "Testing, testing." Her voice crackled through the facility's restored speakers. "This is Trainee Parker to any coalition forces monitoring this frequency. Thank you for the excellent training simulation. We'd like to schedule a follow-up session for next month if you're available. We're particularly interested in multi-vector assault scenarios with sustained engagement. Parameters. Parameters. Atrio." Vix-Tal looked at his aide with the expression of someone who had just realized that the universe was not merely indifferent to his suffering, but was actively enjoying it. "Core 9. Please prepare a full report for High Command. Include everything we've observed, all the recorded communications, and our complete tactical analysis." "Yes, sir." "What should I list as our mission status?" The commander considered this question with the care of someone trying to explain quantum physics to a particularly dense houseplant. "Listed as successful failure with a recommendation for immediate strategic reassessment of our entire approach to human psychology." "And our next course of action, sir?" Vix-Tal watched as more humans emerged from improvised shelters they had apparently constructed during the bombardment, looking refreshed and ready for whatever came next. "I think, Lieutenant, we may need to consider the possibility that we've been approaching this conflict from entirely the wrong angle." "Sir?" "Bessie. It's becoming increasingly clear that conventional warfare may not be an effective strategy against an enemy that considers our best efforts to be educational opportunities." On the display, the humans had begun organizing themselves into work groups, efficiently clearing debris and salvaging materials with the kind of teamwork that military strategists usually only dream about. They moved with purpose and coordination, clearly energized by their recent training exercise. "Sir," Core 9 said quietly, "what if they're not actually as tough as they seem? What if this is all some elaborate psychological operation designed to make us think they're invincible?" Vix-Tal considered this possibility for exactly 3 seconds before dismissing it. "Lieutenant, I've been studying human psychology for 6 years. Trust me when I say that no species is capable of maintaining that level of deception while simultaneously being genuinely enthusiastic about being bombed." The communication system crackled to life again. "Coalition forces. This is Sergeant Williams. We're ready to begin cleanup operations, but we wanted to express our appreciation for the realism of today's exercise. The plasma charges were particularly effective, and the timing of the structural collapses created excellent training conditions for emergency response protocols." She paused, and they could hear her consulting with someone in the background. "We've compiled some feedback on areas for improvement in future simulations. Would you prefer that we submit this through official channels, or would you like us to transmit it directly?" Vix-Tal reached for the communication controls, then stopped. What exactly was he supposed to say to that? "Thank you for your feedback on our attempt to annihilate you. We're glad our war crimes met your educational standards, sir." Core 9 prompted. Just tell them we'll be in touch," Vix-Tal said finally. "And Lieutenant? Start working on alternative strategies for dealing with human military forces. Clearly, conventional approaches are not going to be sufficient." "What kind of alternatives, sir?" The commander looked one last time at the display, where the humans were now holding what appeared to be an impromptu awards ceremony, handing out commendations for performance during the bombardment. "I honestly don't know, Lieutenant. But I have a feeling we're going to need to get very creative, very quickly." 3 weeks later, Commander Vix-Tal found himself in the most uncomfortable position of his military career, sitting across from Admiral Keth Vore in the Coalition's highest security briefing room, explaining why their most devastating military operation had somehow resulted in a business partnership proposal. The Admiral's bioluminescence had been stuck on aggressive orange for the entire meeting, which was never a good sign. Her razor-sharp mandibles clicked with the rhythmic precision of a countdown timer, and her 4 eyes never left Vix-Tal's increasingly dim glow. "Let me ensure I understand this correctly, Commander." Admiral Keth Vore's voice carried the kind of controlled fury that made seasoned warriors check their escape routes. "You authorized a full-scale bombardment of the human training facility. You used our most advanced weaponry, and now they want to pay us to do it again." That's essentially correct, Admiral." "And they've submitted a detailed performance review?" Vix-Tal consulted his datapad with the enthusiasm of someone reading his own obituary. "Yes, ma'am. They particularly praised our attention to detail in creating authentic combat stress scenarios and our innovative use of environmental hazards to enhance training realism." Admiral Keth Vore's bioluminescence shifted to a color that didn't have a name in most galactic languages, but roughly translated to homicidal bewilderment. "Show me their latest communication." The holographic display activated, revealing a professional-looking human in military uniform, sitting at a desk that appeared to be constructed from debris from their bombed facility. Behind him, other humans could be seen continuing their training exercises in the background, using the crater-pocked landscape like an obstacle course. "Greetings, Coalition Defense Forces." The human began with a smile that was probably meant to be friendly but somehow managed to be deeply unsettling. "I'm Colonel Thompson, Director of Advanced Combat Training for the Terran Defense Initiative. We wanted to follow up on last month's exceptional training partnership." Admiral Keth Vore's optical sensors focused with laser-like intensity. "Training partnership?" Colonel Thompson continued, consulting notes that looked suspiciously like they were written on the back of weapons manuals. "Based on our analysis of your recent simulation exercise, we've identified several areas where we could expand our collaborative training program. We're particularly interested in your siege warfare capabilities and your psychological operations techniques." "Psychological operations?" Admiral Keth Vore turned to Vix-Tal with an expression that suggested his next performance review was going to be memorable for all the wrong reasons. "We've received positive feedback from our trainees regarding Agent Click 17's motivational broadcasts," Colonel Thompson was saying. "However, we feel there's room for improvement in the creativity department. Perhaps we could arrange for more personalized demoralizing messages. Our soldiers are eager to practice maintaining morale under more sophisticated psychological pressure." Vix-Tal's bioluminescence had now faded to a pale green that his species associated with surrender. "Admiral, there's more." "Of course there is." The human colonel shuffled his improvised papers and continued. "We've also prepared a comprehensive proposal for expanded training scenarios. We're requesting full orbital bombardment exercises, extended siege simulations, and what we're calling total warfare immersion experiences. We believe these advanced training programs could provide valuable preparation for our personnel while offering your forces excellent practice opportunities." Admiral Keth Vore slowly turned her attention back to the display. "Practice opportunities?" "Absolutely. We understand that maintaining military readiness requires regular combat exercises. By participating in our training programs, your forces would gain valuable experience while helping us prepare for future conflicts. It's what we humans call a win-win situation." The Admiral's mandibles had stopped clicking entirely, which was somehow more ominous than their previous rhythm. "They want us to practice conquering them." "It gets worse, ma'am," Vix-Tal said quietly. "Show her the budget proposal." Colonel Thompson pulled out another makeshift document. "We've prepared a preliminary budget for expanded training operations. We're prepared to offer standard military contractor rates for your services, plus performance bonuses for particularly creative or challenging scenarios. We believe this arrangement could be mutually beneficial for both our organizations. They want to pay us to attack them, Admiral Kethvor said slowly, as if saying it out loud might make it make more sense. And they're offering competitive rates, Vix-Tal added helpfully. The human colonel was still talking. We've also included provisions for equipment replacement and facility reconstruction costs. We understand that effective training requires realistic damage, and we're prepared to factor those expenses into our operational budget. Admiral Kethvor stood up abruptly, her exoskeleton creaking with the sudden movement. Commander, I need you to explain to me exactly how we went from planning to eliminate the human military threat to becoming their preferred training contractor. Well, ma'am, it appears that human psychology operates on fundamentally different principles than our xenological profiles suggested. They seem to interpret adversity as opportunity, challenges as entertainment, and mortal danger as educational curriculum. Are you telling me that they're too stupid to understand that we're trying to kill them? Vix-Tal considered this carefully. No, ma'am, I think they understand perfectly. They just don't care. In fact, they seem to prefer it that way. The holographic display continued showing Colonel Thompson, who was now discussing logistics with obvious enthusiasm. We've identified 17 additional training facilities that would benefit from your specialized services. We're particularly excited about the potential for zero-gravity combat simulations aboard our orbital platforms. They want us to attack their space stations too. Admiral Kethvor's bioluminescence was now cycling through colors that suggested either an imminent nervous breakdown or the onset of religious enlightenment. According to their proposal, yes, they're offering premium rates for space-based operations due to the increased complexity and logistical challenges. Colonel Thompson held up what appeared to be a hand-drawn chart. We've also prepared a performance metric system to help evaluate the effectiveness of future training exercises. We'll be rating scenarios based on realism, creativity, tactical challenge, and educational value. High-performing training partners will be eligible for preferred contractor status and recurring engagement opportunities. Admiral Kethvor sat back down with the careful precision of someone who had just realized that the universe was far stranger than Military Academy had prepared her for. They're going to rate our attempts to destroy them like a restaurant review system, apparently. And they want recurring engagements? Regular scheduled bombardments? Yes, ma'am. They're suggesting quarterly comprehensive exercises with monthly tactical scenarios. The human colonel was wrapping up his presentation. We're looking forward to continuing our productive partnership with coalition forces. Please let us know when you'd like to schedule our next training exercise. We're particularly interested in testing our new rapid response protocols under authentic combat conditions. The transmission ended. Dead, leaving the briefing room in silence except for the gentle hum of life support systems that suddenly seemed absurdly peaceful compared to the existential crisis unfolding in the minds of the assembled military leadership. Commander, Admiral Kethvor said finally, what do our intelligence analysts make of this situation? Vix-Tal pulled up another section of his increasingly thick report. Well, ma'am, the consensus seems to be that humans have evolved psychological mechanisms that transform potentially traumatic experiences into sources of growth and learning. They appear to thrive under pressure in ways that our models couldn't predict. Are they suggesting that warfare actually makes humans stronger? Not just stronger, ma'am, more capable, more confident, and more enthusiastic about future challenges. It's as if conflict itself is a form of nourishment for their species. Admiral Kethvor stared at the tactical display showing human military installations across their territory. So our options are what, exactly? Continue attacking them and help them become better soldiers, or stop attacking them and let them expand unchallenged? There is a third option, ma'am, which is A. We could accept their business proposal. The Admiral's bioluminescence flickered between several colors that didn't exist in nature and probably shouldn't exist anywhere else either. You're suggesting we become military contractors for the species we're supposed to be conquering? It would provide us with regular income, steady employment for our military forces, and detailed intelligence about human capabilities and tactics. Plus, according to their proposal, the pay is excellent, and the downside? We'd essentially be training the most militarily effective species in the known galaxy to become even more effective at warfare. Admiral Kethvor considered this for a long moment. May, what does High Command think about this? They've asked for a detailed cost-benefit analysis and a risk assessment report. And the preliminary numbers suggest that the contract work would be significantly more profitable than traditional conquest operations, with much lower casualty rates for our forces. The Admiral stood up again, pacing around the briefing room with the deliberate gait of someone working through a problem that had no precedent in military history. So we could make more money helping them train than we could by conquering their territory? Substantially more. Ma'am. And we'd avoid the administrative headaches of occupying hostile territory, not to mention that they don't seem particularly hostile. No, ma'am. If anything, they seem genuinely appreciative of our efforts. Admiral Kethvor stopped pacing and faced the tactical display again. Commander, I want you to prepare a formal response to their proposal, include our standard contractor terms and conditions, but add provisions for creative flexibility and performance incentives. Mom, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it properly. I want professional standards, clear deliverables, and a comprehensive training curriculum that challenges their forces while advancing our strategic objectives. Vix-Tal's bioluminescence brightened slightly. So we're accepting their offer? We're exploring a non-traditional approach to interspecies relations. If the humans want to turn warfare into a business partnership, then we'll show them what professional military contractors can accomplish. And our conquest objectives? Admiral Kethvor's mandibles curved into what might have been a smile if her species had evolved differently. Commander, I suspect that by the time we finish training them, the humans will be so militarily advanced that conquest will be irrelevant. They'll probably end up conquering half the galaxy themselves. Is that a problem, ma'am? The Admiral considered this question with the philosophical depth of someone who had just realized that victory and defeat might not be mutually exclusive concepts. Not if we're the ones who trained them. I suspect there could be significant strategic advantages to being the preferred military contractor for the galaxy's most successful expansionist species. So we're betting on the humans? Commander, I think we may have discovered that when you can't beat them, and joining them isn't an option, the next best strategy is to help them become so successful that being associated with them becomes advantageous. Vix-Tal began preparing the contract documents with something approaching enthusiasm. Should I include provisions for exclusive training partnerships? Absolutely. If we're going to help create the most formidable military force in galactic history, I want to make sure we're the only ones providing that service. The tactical display continued showing human installations, but now instead of targets, they looked like business opportunities. Training facilities that could be upgraded, personnel that could be challenged, and scenarios that could be designed to push the boundaries of military effectiveness. Ma'am, Vix-Tal said as he worked on the contract terms, what do we tell our own forces about this change in strategy? Admiral Kethvor's bioluminescence settled into a steady, confident blue. We tell them the truth, Commander. We tell them that we've identified a new approach to interspecies relations that promises to be more profitable, more sustainable, and significantly more interesting than traditional conquest. And if they ask about the implications of training a species that might eventually surpass our own military capabilities, the Admiral's mandibles curved again in that expression that was definitely starting to look like satisfaction. Then we remind them that evolution is inevitable, progress is unstoppable, and the smart money is always on the species that treats impossible challenges as routine training exercises. Outside the briefing room, the stars continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the fact that somewhere in their light, two species had just accidentally discovered that the most effective form of warfare might actually be cooperation in disguise. And in a small training facility on a distant human world, enthusiastic soldiers were already planning their next graduation exercise, and blissfully unaware that they had just redefined the entire concept of military conflict. The universe, it seemed, had developed quite a sense of humor after all.